welcome to Mooney Reads. Today I'm going to be doing the Get to Know My Taste tag. I saw this tag earlier today over on Mary Nez's channel. She put together this tag along with Sam from Thoughts on Tomes, and I thought it was a super cool tag. I love BookTube tags. I did a whole lot more of them when I first started, like 5 years ago at this point, which is wild. It's been that long. But they haven't really been as popular. So hopefully this one picks up steam and hopefully more people will make new tags because I adore them. This one in particular is really thoughtful and cool. So I'm excited to get into it. The first question is, how do you rate your books? Do you use star ratings or do something else? And in general, I do use star ratings, with the exception of when I read children's picture books. I've stopped rating those, but I think I talked about this in one of my recent videos. It might have been another tag video, or maybe my review of last year. I actually cut out a sizable amount of the ramble about star review or star ratings. I think that they are useful because it's mechanic that a lot of people use. It's the default thing on Goodreads and Storygraph and all that. And people know what you mean when you say it was a 5-star book, it was great. If it's a 1-star book, it was garbage. But so far as my particular way that I use the star ratings, definitely feels different depending on the genre a little bit, but that's mostly, I think, just because you need to go into different types of books with different sets of assumptions. Like, if I were to read a middle grade book and rate it like I was reading an academic text, that would be silly. The next question is, how do you approach reviewing books? What's your review style? Analytical or emotional, casual or structured? I would say this is another one that varies, because my perspective of a graphic novel is going to be very different than a nonfiction book. And even within that, with something like a graphic novel, sometimes I could just basically kind of go on vibes and emotions and what's pretty, but I do like to look at things more deeply too. So I think in general I do tend to be more analytical, but emotions and aesthetic do play a role, especially in books that are more geared towards aesthetics and emotions. And in general, I do try to give detailed, thoughtful reviews. Of course, it's not going to be like that for every single book, but especially because I don't think that the stars really do very much. In fact, sometimes a lot of the time I won't even mention a star review in a video, just because I think that what I'm saying about it matters more than if I gave it 3.75 or a 4-star rating, Next question is, what's the book that made you a reader? And this is kind of a hard question to answer because I don't really remember not reading. In a literal sense, I don't remember how I was taught to read. But the first big series that I remember really, really loving was probably The Guardians of Ga'Hoole in late elementary school, which is a fantasy series of owls. I'd imagine it was akin to the Warrior Cats, which I somehow did not read. I don't know if the bulk of the series was out before I got to that age. I feel like it started, I could have gotten into the Warrior Cats books if I had been presented with them. I was obsessed with animals, which is, I think, one of the reasons why I got hooked on Guardians of Ga'Hoole so much. But yeah. The next question is, do you have a genre niche? Yes and no. I think I read widely, but I do have specific niches that I'm interested in within that. I will say that I don't read a ton of high fantasy. Most of the sci-fi fantasy that I end up reading is graphic novel. I would say that some of the niches that I really enjoy, in general, queer books. One of the big things that I was interested in when I started this channel was queer YA. I actually stumbled upon BookTube as an entity trying to find YA graphic novels that were queer. But I enjoy queer books kind of across genre. I have quite a few nonfiction reading niches. I've got a background in sociology. My master's was in sociology. So that in and of itself is going to be an interest, and I've been trying to get more into history. So one big reading niche that I've been kind of going in on is the AIDS epidemic. So the 80s and 90s, a lot of queer books, kind of mostly nonfiction, but it's been increasingly more into literary fiction as well. I've actually made some topical TBRs to kind of rein in where my reading is at. I made those a while back and have definitely gotten more books, and I've been trying to kind of restructure that a little bit. But in general, I guess my niche would be gay, but I do tend to read kind of widely. Question number 5 is, do you prefer character-driven or plot-driven books? And I would say definitely character-driven. Not that a book with a good plot can't be really great, because I definitely have read some with some really cool plots. But the thing is, if a book has a really good plot and characters that I do not care about, I'll be hard-pressed to actually finish the book. Whereas if there is a book with really compelling and interesting characters, and throughout the book they do basically nothing, I'll eat that up. Like, that's beautiful. That's ideal lit fic to me. So definitely character. I also love theme heavy books. Like, that's probably the biggest thing to me, is I want complex and interesting themes and things that I can really pick out of a book. So question number 6 is, what is a book that you love so much that you don't care if others like it or not? And this one was really hard because it depends on if we're talking about, like, if you give one of my favorites a 1 star, I probably will take it personally. Like, people do those reacting to 1 star reviews of your favorite books. I couldn't do that because I would get too upset with some books, which sounds ridiculous maybe, but it's just, no. I do think that almost any book, though, like, if someone were to give it like a 3 star or even like a little bit under, and they gave good reasoning, like if they really don't like character-driven books, or if they're exclusively a romance reader and they tried to read, there are reasons why someone wouldn't like a book, and like I can be reasonable with that. So this one was kind of hard to answer. However, I think part of the point of this question is to talk about a book that you really love. So I will say, a book that I love a lot is Summer Suns by Lee Mandello. It's also the book that I probably recommend the most, like, in general, like the number of times that I recommend it. I'm a bookseller, and every other person I see in the horror section gets this recommendation. It is super atmospheric, thematically layered, and the character is deeply interesting. He's very messy and not particularly likable. So in that way I could see like why people wouldn't like it if they thought he was annoying or something. Like, that's valid. I like it enough for no one else to like it. But at the end of the day, I don't think that there's a real answer for number 6, just because I would get personally offended if somebody hated this book. Number 7 is, what is a book you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, your reading tastes don't align? This one was also difficult to answer because I do feel like there are reasonable reasons that people could say why they don't like a certain book. But I do think that I found an answer to this one. I'm going to go with Transliberation by Leslie Feinberg. This is an essay collection, or a collection of speeches, really, more, in some essays, about solidarity within the trans community and the importance of solidarity, like, between communities as well. It also includes some essays by other trans community members, including Sylvia Rivera. It's just incredible. And this is one that if someone read it and gave it a 1 star, like, our reading tastes probably don't align, but also our morals really don't align at all. So that's the one that I chose for it. But like I said, I do read pretty broadly. So like, I mean, I follow a lot of people who don't read that much nonfiction, and it's fine, you know? But yeah, if somebody read this and hated it, we probably couldn't be friends, just in general. Number 8 is, what is in your trash pocket? What books, tropes, or themes that you know are bad, but you love them anyways? I love this term. I've never heard of the trash pocket before, but that's a lot better framing than guilty pleasures. And the first things I think of for this aren't book related. It's more TV and maybe some music, just because I've been in like a reality TV era, and I know most of it is really bad and in so many different ways. But in terms of books, the only stuff I could like even kind of think of is maybe like nostalgia related stuff. Like I feel like there are some books from when I was a high schooler that I might attempt to reread that I know are like really bad, like The House of Night. Objectively, those are awful, but I have considered rereading them to attempt to like finish the series. Outside of that, the closest thing to like a guilty pleasure sort of thing would be more cheesy stuff, maybe. Like in some of the romance, but I wouldn't even call that a guilty pleasure adjacent sort of thing so much, because they are stuff that I would recommend. It's just not like academically rigorous or whatever, so I don't think I'd even put it in this category. Question number 9, do you have any deal breakers in books? And I think this is very situational. I've put stuff down because I wasn't in the headspace for them, but that's not really like a deal breaker. One thing that's a really big ick to me, this is particular to romance books because like literally the whole thing is about the romance. I don't read a lot of straight romance in general, but if there is a big emphasis on like, he's so big and I'm so small and fragile and he could break me but he won't, like that kind of dynamic, I just have a really hard time reading about. It just squicks me out. Like, live your best life and find, you know, the Hulk or whatever. Be small and dainty and cute. I'm not going to put myself inside of that headspace. I'm sure there are other like particular kind of squicky things in that regard too, just because of the time that I spent trying to cram myself inside of hetero relationships. It did not work out. So like that sort of thing just doesn't work for me. There are certain things, like themes in a book, like if it's super racist and things like that, I would obviously like put it down. Or if just the whole thing was super homophobic or cis-sexist, I would put it down. I haven't encountered a ton of that stuff in recent years, necessarily in something that I started. I don't think a lot of the stuff I can think of is like why I wouldn't pick up a book to begin with. Like there are certain very popular books that are written by someone who has previously written military romance, and that's a flavor of propaganda I am very uninterested in engaging with. So stuff like that. If things are really like endorsing that sort of a thing, like that's another thing that would put me off from a book. There are more that I could search for and find in that regard too. But that should give you at least a little bit of insight. Question number 10 is, what is a strong opinion that you have about a book that's been released in the past year? And there are several 2024 books that I've read. I don't think that I have any that I have hot takes on. I haven't read any that I've hated, but I will shout out two that I really, really loved. I think they are underhyped, and will not be sufficiently hyped until they are ones that, you know, you can't scroll through Book Talk without seeing. The two that came to my mind first are The Woods All Black by Lee Mandello. Yes, this is the same author as Summer Sons. This one is one that's definitely not for everyone. I think in an even bigger way than Summer Suns, but I am obsessed with it. I love it. And if you want to hear more about it, you can check out my video on underhyped trans books that I put out recently. The other 2024 book that I thought was really underhyped is The Deep Dark by Molly Knox Ostertag. In general, I adore Molly Knox Ostertag. I loved the Witch Boy series. The Girl in the Sea was also very cute, or The Girl from the Sea. But The Deep Dark is even better. It also, I think, deals with more intense stuff than The Witch Boy or The Girl from the Sea. The Witch Boy, I think, is technically middle grade, and Girl from the Sea, I could see as one of those that could fit either middle grade or YA. But The Deep Dark is more firmly YA. Not only is it cool on an artistic level, some of the stuff that she decides to do with the illustrations during part of it and incorporating a certain type of photography, but just the story as a whole. I feel like this is one that I can't really say too much about because I feel like I went into it knowing very little. I just knew it was Molly Knox Ostertag and that it was queer and a little bit dark. And it really blew me away. The big themes in it are like intergenerational trauma and recovering from people pleasing in a certain kind of way. It also says a lot of interesting things about relationships and positions that people put themselves in when they lack confidence. There's more, but I'll stop there to refrain from anything potentially spoilery or just rambling on about it more because I totally could. Question 11. What do you look for in writing? What makes a book stand out to you? Is it prose, style, themes, or something else? Again, this is going to depend on the genre. Like I said before, I'm a very, theme-focused reader. That is the thing that's going to elevate a book in my mind. I think that there are some writing style things that you could do, though. But the thing is, the writing style choices that I am interested in the most are also intertwined with theme. So things like how the narration is used. A couple of examples of unique ways that narration is used that impacts the theme that I really enjoyed. The Gifts of the Body by Rebecca Brown. This is told in vignettes and focuses on someone who is a nurse's aide for people with AIDS. And the narration is largely very matter-of-fact and emotionally distanced in a way, but as you go through the story, you can kind of see why. This book distilled an emotion that I had seen in other books that are also written in the early 90s, which was a peak of the AIDS epidemic in the US, before when things were really hopeless feeling. But this piece really distilled the emotion of being in that place and the dissociation that was experienced kind of alongside these really big emotions. So in that way, the thing that made this stand out is narrative, but at the end of the day, it's an exploration beyond that. I don't know if theme is really the right thing, but it's still something kind of outside of just the literal events happening. And in a similar way, Send My Roots Rain by Ibis Gomez Vega. This played with narration, and that part of the story is told in first person by one character, and then in certain sections it would go into third person limited to different characters. This is another lesbian novel from the 90s. I think that the choice to change the narration like that was really interesting. Obviously, it gives us more insight into the different characters, but with the way that the story goes, it also makes you think about it makes you think about narration, and it makes you think about the other characters in a different way, which makes other components of the story, not just the plot, but also the character work and the themes that are being brought out, it makes that highlighted in a different sort of way. And then, of course, another example of something looking at style is, of course, going to be poetry. I really enjoy poetry. I mean, obviously there are some stories that are told poetically, which is cool, but at the end of the day, the thing that attracts me the most to poetry is the emotion. Themes and emotion, and I feel like I need to go back to my fucking classes when I got my English degree, because like I don't know how to articulate or like unentwine the idea of theme versus like the emotion that's elicited, because it's not, with poetry especially, it's not necessarily like, I mean, I guess it is the emotion that's evoked for the character or person writing the poetry, but it's like what it makes you feel. And that's the thing that really draws me to poetry, is that ability to build emotion in a way that you can't through any other medium. So of course style is going to be a part of that, but it's not just the literal writing and look at how aesthetically pleasing it is, but it is what that writing does, if that makes sense. So I guess the short answer would be theme and emotion, but that is done through many different means. Question number 12 is, how do you decide what to read next? Your guess is as good as mine, to be honest. I love making a book list. I have so many lists. I love a TBR, a pile of possibilities. How often do I follow them? That is the question. Not very often. I love the idea of putting something structured together and picking from that. And I've been trying to figure out how I can incorporate this TBR building with my actual reading tendencies, which is completely mood-based. And I think my answer is kind of multiple piles of possibilities. Like I have multiple themed TBRs that are in my immediate reach that I've been picking from. So I'm very much a mood reader. I'm constantly in the middle of a bunch of books. At the beginning of this year, I tried to tell myself, okay, so we're only reading 3 physical books at a time and 2 audiobooks. That hasn't panned out super well. The audiobooks have been more manageable, but I don't tend to read a bunch of those at the same time. But I am a very moody reader. Question 13 is, where do you get inspiration for your YouTube content? And that's something that I would like to hone in a little bit more in general anyways. I feel like over the past couple of years, I've like lost my way with it a little bit, because I used to do a lot more like themed recommendations videos. I would pull from, you know, if a certain like holiday or like memorial type of day, like Queer History Month or something, if that was coming up, that would be a big part of it. Things like tag videos. I also used to do like TBR videos for everything and like readathons and stuff. I haven't done TBR videos so much recently because, like I just talked about, I usually don't end up following them anyways. But lately, I think what's been the most fun to follow is like what I'm reading. So doing more vlogs, and kind of depending on my mood, like I'll pick something that I think that I want to focus on reading. Like when I did backlist books, that's something that I've been wanting to read, so I did a whole vlog of backlist books. There are other, I think, even more interesting concepts. My favorite like series of videos that I did last year was my astrology reading, or my astrology reading vlogs. And I read a book for each of my big 6 like astrology chart. That was a lot of fun. So I think like, I guess my reading has been the inspiration for my YouTube stuff recently. But I think once I get my books a little bit more settled, I'll have more of an inspiration for more of the recommendations videos. We've been in the process of turning our shed in the backyard into a library for a minute now. But hopefully once that's put together, that will be an inspiring space for me. Question 14 is, if you could make any book go viral, what would it be? There's so many ways that I could answer this question. like if Drag King Dreams could get the same energy as Stone Butch Blues, I think that would be beautiful. I think there's a lot of nonfiction that it would be great to see go viral, especially looking at what nonfiction does end up going viral. One book that I think could be productive, like, to go viral and might actually be, like, more realistic because it is closer to front list. It would just come out last year. And it's reasonably short, and I think more people would be inclined to pick up short nonfiction. Imagination and Manifesto by Ruha Benjamin. It was one of my favorites last year, and is hopeful while also being realistic. And I think that's something that would be really beneficial in this moment. And hopefully that would also mean that people would look at her works cited and also read books from that, because there are a lot of books that she references and people that she references that should also garner more attention. And then the final question, number 15. Who are some booktubers with reading tastes similar to yours? And I don't think there's anyone with like 100% the same reading taste as me, especially because I have like my nonfiction books that are a little niche. So I think that most YouTubers that I end up watching, it's like a Venn diagram, you know? But one person whose reviews I really trust, because they have impeccable taste, is Audrey from Perpetual Pages. They are always finding really awesome queer books from a lot of different genres. And some of the genres that they really like are similar to mine, and some of them are different. And whenever I'm feeling like stepping outside of my comfort zone, they're a very safe person that I can like look through their stuff and find a recommendation. Like I said, I don't read a ton of like high fantasy and stuff like that, but if I were to want to read it, or get super into sci-fi, I would be looking at what they've read. But I have bought and enjoyed so many books based on the recommendation, just in general. Another person in a similar vein is Alex from Pucks and Paperback. He also focuses a lot on queer books, especially YA and middle grade, though not exclusively. If I'm looking for a good middle grade YA or like contemporary stuff, just in general, I'm gonna be seeing what he's reading. With nonfiction, the first people who come to my mind are from Instagram, actually. Schizophrenic Reads and Nonfiction Queer. Again, just like with the other two I talked about, like, there are some things that are different from what I read, but there's also like a considerable amount of overlap. I feel like both of them end up going with more like frontlist stuff than I end up with, because I've been adventuring into a lot of backlist stuff. But in general, I tend to trust the recommendations, and they have some similar niches to me and some similar interests. So those are the main people who come to my mind. That is the last question in this tag. So in the comments, let me know about your reading tastes, some books that you've read recently that you like. And if you have a channel, definitely do this tag. I know I'm going to be looking through the playlist that the creators of this tag are making, because I would love to find more people to follow. And here's to hoping there are more book tags that people come up with, because I really like that. And thank you all so much for watching. Bye.